The birth of a deliverer. Moses was born during a dark time for the Israelites, who were enslaved under Pharaoh's rule in Egypt. A decree demanded the death of every Hebrew boy, but his mother, Jochebed, refused to surrender her child. In a desperate act of faith, she placed her baby in a basket and set him afloat on the Nile River, entrusting his fate to God. Pharaoh's daughter discovered the crying baby and, moved with compassion, adopted him as her own. Thus, Moses grew up as a prince of Egypt, surrounded by wealth and privilege, but his heart remained tethered to his Hebrew heritage. A turning point in the desert. As Moses matured, he became aware of the suffering of his people. One day, he witnessed an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave and, in a moment of anger, killed the oppressor. Fearful of the consequences, Moses fled to the wilderness of Midian, leaving behind his royal life. In Midian, Moses found refuge with a family of shepherds and married Zipporah, the daughter of Jethro. For 40 years, he lived a quiet life tending sheep, until an extraordinary event changed his destiny forever. The burning bush. While tending his flock on Mount Horeb, Moses encountered a bush that burned but was not consumed by the flames. From the midst of the fire, the voice of God called out, commanding Moses to return to Egypt and deliver the Israelites from bondage. Hesitant and full of self-doubt, Moses questioned his worthiness, but God reassured him, providing signs and appointing his brother Aaron as his spokesperson. Confronting Pharaoh. Moses and Aaron stood before Pharaoh, demanding, "Let my people go." Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he refused, prompting God to unleash 10 devastating plagues upon Egypt. Each plague, rivers turning to blood, swarms of locusts, and the death of the firstborn demonstrated God's power and Pharaoh's stubbornness. Finally, after the Passover night, when the angel of death struck down the firstborn in every Egyptian household, Pharaoh relented. The Israelites were free to leave. The Exodus and the Red Sea. The Israelites fled Egypt, guided by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. However, Pharaoh changed his mind and pursued them with his army. Trapped between the Red Sea and the advancing Egyptians, the people despaired. But Moses stretched out his staff, and God parted the sea, allowing the Israelites to cross on dry ground. When the Egyptians followed, the waters crashed back, drowning Pharaoh's army. The journey to Sinai. The Israelites' journey through the wilderness was marked by trials and miracles. They complained of hunger and thirst, and God provided manna from heaven and water from a rock. Despite witnessing God's power, their faith wavered. At Mount Sinai, Moses ascended the mountain to meet with God, who gave him the 10 Commandments, a covenant for the people to follow. When Moses descended, he found the Israelites worshipping a golden calf, betraying their covenant. In anger, he smashed the tablets, but later returned to the mountain to intercede for the people. 40 years in the wilderness. Because of their lack of faith, the Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years. During this time, Moses served as their leader, judge, and intercessor, enduring their complaints and rebellion. He struck a rock to provide water but disobeyed God's command, which led to his own punishment. He would not enter the Promised Land. The Promised Land and Moses' final moments. As the Israelites stood on the brink of entering Canaan, Moses delivered a series of speeches, reminding them of God's faithfulness and urging them to obey his commandments. From Mount Nebo, Moses gazed upon the Promised Land, knowing he would not enter it. There, he died, and God himself buried him in an unknown location. Moses' legacy endured, not just as a prophet and leader, but as a symbol of God's power to redeem and transform.